You want to do Elvis?
Let's do Elvis.
Elvis is a 2022 film directed by Baz Luhrmann, director of the
Greatest Showman
on Earth. Greatest Showman on Earth.
Australia was his last one. He came to us in a flash of style and panache with Romeo and Juliet, which either works for you or it doesn't.
I like that movie.
He also did Moulin Rouge, which Bryan, I think he pleasures himself to. He has.
I do like that film as well.
And what else did he did? Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
Great Gatsby. He
was
gives
the
it his
last
all.
man to hire Toby.
He gives it his all. That's not true because Toby was just
Before
in the last
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. He gives it his all.
He does.
And
he doesn't half-ass it.
No, he doesn't leave much. I feel like the whole world is on his screen.
Starring Austin Butler as the titular king of rock and roll. Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker, a.k.a. the Snowman.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a hurry. I think I neglected to write down. There's a girl named Olivia who plays Priscilla Presley, who's quite good.
Yeah, so that was not in your notes.
No, I know. I can't.
She was good, and I looked her up. She's been in things, but nothing that I had really seen before. So
same. 79% Rotten Tomatoes. This is in theaters now. 2 hours and 40 minutes, Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Ironic that a movie about Elvis would be uploaded. But here we are.
Right, come on.
What a time for boomers.
Yeah.
Between Top Gun and Elvis. I don't know what your viewing experience was like. I was sitting next to a woman who I would say was on the north end of 65. She was a gray-haired woman, and she was sitting alone. And by the end of the film, she was having emotional struggles.
Oh, yeah?
She was deep breathing.
It was like watching part of her childhood die.
Yeah, I really think that she was going through some things next to me.
Hey, there's some things to really enjoy with this movie.
Absolutely.
And there's some things to really wince at with this movie.
There's some things you could have cut.
But I've talked to, I did my due diligence. I wanted to make sure I didn't speak out of turn. I'm not a giant Elvis fan. I talked to a few friends of mine as well as my own mother, who are giant Elvis fans. This movie is hitting the mark for Elvis fans.
I would think this hits the mark.
Yeah, you an Elvis fan?
Yeah, I like Elvis.
My mom's already seen it twice. So that's over nearly 6 hours she's spent watching this rendition of Elvis. All right, it opens up with at a breakneck speed, and the pace is unbelievable. And I'm thinking 10 minutes in, like, how are they going to keep this going?
And they do.
And they do. And he does.
It's a tiring watch.
It is. I was exhausted about halfway through, and I started looking at my watch a little more often than I would like to admit. I lost some interest.
Oh, really?
I could have used 40 minutes less of this movie, I think.
It's a chore.
And
I'm not sure in that it's bad. It's a chore in that it requires a lot of
attention.
Focus. Yes, attention.
But there's not a lot going on story-wise, plot-wise, development-wise, as far as...
It looks good.
It looks great. But it's like watching a music video that's really fun to look at. But after a while, you're just like, okay, I need more. I learned a whole lot about the Colonel, but I didn't really learn anything new about Elvis. And I would have liked to have, because I don't know a whole lot about Elvis. And I seems to me that everything that I learned about Elvis in this movie, I had already knew.
Yeah, this is by no means a straight standard biopic, but at the same time, maybe I was thinking about that throughout the film, because I was thinking the same thing you were, which is, I don't know how much I'm learning about Elvis. This is all very top level, but at the same time, Elvis exists more. Well, you're a fan, Avery. Like, Elvis exists more as like a myth than a man,
sideshow,
right? Yeah, like
which they illustrate.
He's a symbol more than he is like a person, a deep three-dimensional person.
But that's the whole point of it.
Yeah, and that's how he was to everybody at the time, right? Nobody knew shit about Elvis.
That's what the movie should do, though, is flesh him out, right? And instead, it just really leaned into that he's a stamp on our, you know,
which
just seemed odd that they wouldn't dive into that, because that's exactly what you...
The stuff that we saw of him, like in his own personal life, was the wincing stuff. Like, first of all, let's just be clear that Austin Butler was fucking phenomenal.
Austin Butler was fantastic.
I never really thought of him as Elvis, but he was a new version of Elvis that I liked more than Elvis, I think. Like, if this was Elvis for the first time around, like Austin Butler was this Elvis and the other Elvis didn't exist, I'd fucking be an Elvis. I can tell you that.
You're an Austin Butler Elvis fan?
I'd be an Austin Butler Elvis fan for sure. But when they have him spending time like watching the assassination announcement of
Bobby Kennedy.
Martin Luther King.
Oh, yeah, there's both.
He's like crying, and then there's something about business like soon after. Like they were trying. It was so obviously wedged in trying to make him an apologies were being made for Elvis all throughout the movie, as far as him reappropriating black music.
Oh, sure, yes.
Him being a an activist.
To be fair,
with
they
his
don't shy
hips.
away from it. You know
But
what I
he
mean?
did. I mean, I don't know if they get into that TV special he did in, what was it, 1974 or something like that. That If I Can Dream, I mean, that was directly him wanting to have a song that he wrote and performed about Martin Luther King's assassination. Of
He
Bobby
did do
Kennedy.
that. That was at the end of the Christmas special.
So he was a civil rights proponent, and he did always acknowledge that.
That's when he got the cool, like hippie directors.
Yeah. But
to
that was
rebrand
that
him.
was in '68. That was the '68 comeback special. I don't think they alluded to that too much. If they did, it was in passing.
There is
because he definitely was affected by that. And then another thing is he did, whenever he was asked, always acknowledge the black artists that he was covering and give them
And
credit.
they suggested that he did that,
which is
in this.
almost never talked about in pop culture, which annoys the shit out of me. Because
Okay.
the running narrative in pop culture is like, oh, he stole this all from black people and he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of artists did that. And sure, I mean, Elvis did it in probably the least problematic way for his time, I would say.
What they suggest in this movie, and tell me what you know as an Elvis fan, is that he grew up. He was like the only whitey in his neighborhood. He fell in love with black culture and black music,
The gospel
and he emulated it. And he was the only person allowed to at that time because he happened to be white.
Well,
so
and
he was
how-
the only one that was allowed to be successful with it.
And how much more forward thinking could you be as a white person at that time to the majority of the people you're hanging out with are black and you just see them as people and friends?
Yeah.
And then you're going to shit on this guy for being racist? Oh, and there's a good chance you have no black people
I don't.
that you know?
I've heard people complain, and they're always white people that I hear this
Yeah,
from
sure.
too. That he just stole from the black community, and then that becomes like part of the narrative, and you start to believe it to an extent. So I saw a lot of apologizing going on to the extent that, and you haven't seen the movie, it is a little bit comical at times where they take away that there's a whole when they made him stop doing his hip thrust, and they got rid of the old Elvis. They were trying to make him more family friendly.
Yeah.
Then he rebelled against that by going against what was expected of him in a live TV. Was it even a live TV? It wasn't even live TV. It was
No, it was
just
like
that
it
concert.
was that concert
with a bunch of cops waiting for him to wiggle. As they say, even if you wiggle your little finger, we're taking you to jail. And there was a racist like 3 miles down the street, like what's his name?
It was the state senator or something.
There's probably one closer than that, too.
and they had probably, but
Probably a couple attendants.
he was giving a speech, and he had like 3 Confederate
A
flags
notable
behind him.
racist.
And Elvis, they were trying to make the parallel that Elvis was going to denounce what this guy was saying down the street by wiggling his hips.
By being fuckable.
yeah. And that was a bit of a stretch. And then there was like this whole outcry, like, we miss the old Elvis. And I was thinking, like, the stakes are so low and this is such bullshit. But I think that might have been part of the message too, because that was during the 50s before things got, it was
True.
part of that post World War II idealized America where,
Yeah.
and then the 60s came along and shit started
Remember,
to
he
get
was
real.
a segregationist. He was giving a talk about segregation. at
Elvis
the time.
didn't ever. I don't believe so.
The
I
racist
think you're-
senator down the road.
I see.
That was not in his notes.
Not his notes.
That's right. That was extemporaneous. Do you buy the narrative shifting slightly that I've heard? I don't know. I'm not buying it, but I want to hear your thoughts. That Tom Hanks was somehow bad in this movie. He was fine.
It was odd.
What's with the accent? Isn't that what everybody's talking about?
But he was Dutch. The Colonel was Dutch.
He was odd. He felt like a Dr. Seuss character at times. He looked like a troll. He literally looked like a troll at times.
It was odd, but I can't say
but
like,
the
oh, that's a
movie
bad
is so
performance.
over the top. I was thinking like this could have been called Beauty and the Beast. Like I was almost going for that. I think at times I don't think that was a mistake. It should have been called Elvis and the Snowman because it was as much about
Colonel Tom.
the Colonel as it was about
Well, he's
Elvis
the
at times.
narrator.
Even though he'd
introduced
go
the
away
story.
for long stretches of the
Yes.
movie and then he'd come back. So I had a hard time. It could have been edited a little bit better. I
agree.
think it could have been a tighter. And this is crazy. And if I knew that this happened, if this was the reality, I'd be furious. I'd be the first one to be furious. But this movie would have been better served if it was Elvis the young year, like the young years.
I totally agree.
And then maybe a Christmas Elvis Part 2 would come out, and that would be a whole separate movie, and you get 4 hours there. I think that would have been. I think there was enough there for that to have happened.
I'm glad you brought that up because my one minor quibble with the movie, and this might not have bothered you. The age thing bothers me. This is not that, but I get bumped by that. I got bumped by this repeatedly, and I'm curious if you heard this from the people you talked to, people that are Elvis fans. And Avery, would this bother you? Austin Butler, beautiful man, up until the end of the film when he's playing like old, dying, bloated Elvis in Vegas. Chiseled jaw, 32-inch waist. Like, didn't even try to put weight on him.
Really?
Yeah.
Elvis is a famous example of like
Yeah.
bloating, out of shape, let it all go. Then he died. And Austin Butler in that final scene with the daughter in the limo, he's fucking chiseled. He looks like goddamn Greek Adonis.
Yeah, I didn't have I absolutely had a problem with that until the very end, and they did address that, and they did take care of it, and they did it seamlessly. And
you think that was seamless?
yeah, when we see the real Elvis come on, and I couldn't even
disagree.
tell it was the real Elvis.
That was more jarring than anything.
It took me a minute because like they're showing us like footage of the
Elvis Presley.
Butler, and then it becomes Elvis Presley. It was almost like a sleight of hand, and I'm like, wait, is this? Did they put him in a fat suit now, or am I looking at the real Elvis? And I was looking at the real Elvis. I'm like, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. I liked the way that they addressed that, and they didn't have him in a fat suit, which would have been cartoony.
I liked that it was Tom Hanks in a fat suit.
It's absolutely true, but still, I don't need to see Austin Butler all fatted up.
I'm just saying, if you're going to show that part of Elvis's life, which they did,
They did it with the clothes. They did it with the clothes. They did it with the sweat. I know what you're saying, and I was annoyed. I'm like, are they just bypassing the fat stage, and they're going to pretend like he never was? But then they did spend a nice chunk with actual footage of Elvis. The real Elvis at the end. And I got to tell you.
I actually liked that part, but it bumped me initially where I'm like, now he's fat?
Because they showed his last performance, his absolute last performance, which they had Austin Butler doing, and then they morphed it into the actual Elvis and his real last performance, and we get to see that, and that was effective for me. And it scratched that itch of needing to see the fat Elvis. Now I could say this: Austin Butler, the real Elvis, has nothing on Austin Butler.
In terms of?
Like, he looks charisma.
Oh, stop it.
No, nothing. He's got nothing. Tell me, Austin Butler's got him beat by a long shot.
Looks charisma.
My
Most famous person ever lived besides Jesus Christ.
That's great.
My biggest complaint with this movie, and I don't know how you avoid it, is that they try and make you feel at certain times.
Still laughing about charisma.
And he's got charisma.
I don't doubt that, but it's Elvis fucking Presley.
I know.
That's good. That's funny.
They asked me to care dramatically a few times, and this movie just did not earn that at all.
It didn't land the punches.
And when you're asking me to care about a movie this stylized,
It was. Sorry, finish what you were saying.
That's it.
You're right though, because it should have picked.
I didn't feel a thing.
It should have picked a lane, which is: are we gonna be stylized and cool the whole time? Because I'm in for that, or are we gonna pull at the heartstrings? Because I'm in for that too. But they tried to do both, and the heartstrings kind of suffered.
Yeah, but I mean, we see that a lot with visionaries. You know, we see it with Christopher Nolan all the time. He's like, all right, here's the part where we're going to make them cry, and it's like it doesn't work because you don't have that in your tool bag. And I get kind of like annoyed. Like, how do you think I'm going to cry at this right now? I'm not going to. I didn't feel nothing, Brian, and I didn't learn enough. So that's why this is a 3-star movie to me. It is very impressive in many ways.
To me too.
Better than I expected. Probably my favorite Baz Luhrmann movie I've ever seen.
You're kidding.
His movies usually bother me a lot.
You think this is better than Romeo and Juliet or Moulin Rouge?
Oh, I didn't like Romeo and Juliet. It was jarring. Maybe I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't ready for that kind of filmmaking. I think that what he did with the camera, just being completely free and morphing that, intertwining that with CGI capabilities, is like nothing you can really imagine from anyone other than Baz.
Do you think this is better than Gatsby? Oh, that's better than Gatsby, I guess.
This was, but this is the final thing I have to say about Elvis, and this is not a good thing. Like 30,
by all means,
starting about the 30-minute mark, maybe even earlier than that, I'm like, I want to see a real movie about Elvis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I want to see an actual like raw.
Well, that's what I was hoping when they said
Not
Austin
Baz.
Butler and Tom Hanks.
But when you knew Baz Luhrmann was directing it, like there's no way you're going to come
it's
anywhere
gonna
close
be-
to reality. It's fantasy. It's
Fairy tale.
It's an animated postal stamp,
Well done.
right?
Because it's a dark, tragic story with him.
It gets pretty dark, and I didn't
does,
realize how
actually.
dark.
Yeah.
But it could be darker.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh yeah. He dies on a fucking toilet from the complications of drugs.
Yeah, another doctor just going, oh, I can keep this boy propped
Dr.
up.
Nick.
Jesus Christ.
Isn't that his name?
I don't know.
Thought it was.
In The Simpsons or in the?
No, in the movie.
But I would
Like-
like to see another movie, an actual dramatic take on this, but not boring. Maybe with some sex appeal as well. You got to have sex
Well,
appeal,
that's
right?
a good question. Then, were you bored at any point during this movie?
Yeah, but like the last 45 minutes, I was looking at my watch a
Yeah, it
lot.
did go on a little long.
I was like, okay, I get it, because you can only see so much eye candy before you're just like, can I get some sustenance here? And then they try to give me sustenance, and I'm like, that's just empty calories too, because I don't give a shit. I'm not feeling anything. I'm sorry, but I'm not.